partiamo. Buongiorno a tutti, intanto come
Good afternoon, everyone, rather. Firstly, I want to tell you about the languages.
parlare in
You can
francese,
speak
inglese e
French,
italiano,
English
si
and
può
Italian today.
ascoltare in
You can
francese e
listen to
inglese.
French and English.
E quindi credo che questo consentirà
So hopefully
una ampia possibilità di interazione e di
there are enough
comprensione per tutti.
opportunities for
Allora,
everybody to be able to speak and to
il
understand
primo
one another.
intervento sarà quello
I'd like to give the floor to the first
poi io
speaker. Are you
dopo.
starting or me?
Ovviamente
Says the
adesso
chair.
daremo la parola ai padroni di casa, a chi
Well, in any
ha,
case,
il
we'll
Comitato Economico
arrange that
Sociale
amongst ourselves.
ha reso
We
possibile
want
questo
to thank the
appuntamento e poi
EESC, the
inizieremo
Economic
con
and
i
Social
lavori
Committee,
previsti da
for
programma.
setting up this
Allora,
meeting for us, and
chiederei
we'll
intanto
hear from them
a
before
Antonio
we go to our agenda. We'd like to ask
introdurre,
Antonio Longo
anche questa
to take the floor
istituzione,
first of all, and he'll
che
tell us a
è
little bit more about this
una istituzione
institution.
di coinvolgimento e
It's an
interazione della
institution
società
where
e della società
society,
europea.
civil society at European level is involved and participates.
Grazie Marco.
Thank you very much.
Grazie
Marco, thank you.
Annalisa Angeri che
Annalisa Angeri.
offrendo al CESE la possibilità
Thank
di
you for giving
ospitare
the Economic and Social
un'iniziativa del
Committee the
genere.
opportunity to
Dicevo
host
prima
your
sottovoce,
initiative.
il CESE, il
The
Comitato Economico e Sociale
EESC,
Europeo, è
the
la
European
casa
Economic
della
and Social
società
Committee,
civile
is
in
the
Europa,
home of civil
il
society in
ponte tra
Europe.
le istituzioni e le,
It brings together
gli
the
interessi
institutions
organizzati,
and
imprenditori,
other interests
lavoratori,
represented by
ambientalisti,
employers,
persone disabili,
employees,
consumatori,
consumers,
eccetera.
disabled people,
Quindi
environmental
noi
associations, and
volentieri
so on and
abbiamo
so
proprio
forth.
la
So
disponibilità di ospitare
we
iniziative come la
are
vostra,
very willing
che
to
è
host initiatives
particolarmente
like
importante e
yours.
interessante nel momento in
It's
cui
especially
lo
interesting to have you
scolamento tra
here at this
istituzioni
time
europee e cittadini
when
è
the
forte, si sente
dialogue
nei
between the
risultati
European Union and the
delle
citizens
elezioni,
is very
successo dei partiti
active. We've had
populisti
recent
e tutte cose che
elections, we've had the
sapete
populists,
meglio di
the
me.
populist rise,
Con
and a lot of
particolare
other issues
piacere
that you
io ho
know a lot
accettato
better than I
l'invito perché
do.
Marco è la voce
I'd
che mi
like
sveglia
to
la domenica mattina con
welcome
la rassegna
Marco.
stampa di
His
Radio
voice
Radicale,
wakes me up
e
every
quindi lo
Sunday
conosco da
morning when I
molti anni
listen
non
to
di persona,
the
ma
news
come
on the
voce.
radio. So I know him very well, not as a person, but I know his voice.
Secondo
It's
motivo
very
per
familiar
cui
to me.
ho accettato con molto
The second reason I was very
piacere
pleased to be
l'impegno
able to accept this
questa
invitation
iniziativa
and being
perché
involved in this
parleranno
initiative is
di
because
iniziative dei
you're going to be
cittadini
talking
europei
about
sullo
European
Stato di
citizens'
diritto. Il
initiatives
CESE
and
ha
the
proprio
rule
un
of
gruppo
law.
di lavoro
At the
che sta lavorando
EESC,
sullo
we
Stato
actually
di
have a
diritto in
group that's
Europa
working on the rule of
e
law
ed è
issues
uno
in
dei
Europe,
temi
and it's
forti
one of the major
anche
topics that we are
questo del
focusing on.
rapporto tra
So,
istituzioni e
this
cittadini
relationship
della
between the
presidenza
institutions and the
di Luca
citizens,
Jahier,
under the
che vi
presidency of
presento, che è alla
Luca
mia
Jahier,
sinistra,
who is
fra
here on
pochi
my left,
istanti gli cederò la parola per
and
un
who will be
saluto. Ecco,
speaking
Luca è un
shortly to
italiano,
welcome you.
una coincidenza felice, è presidente
He's Italian as well, by the
del
way.
Comitato
He's been the president of the
Economico e Sociale
Economic and
Europeo
Social
e ha fatto
Committee
proprio
for the
del
last few years,
rinascimento
and
dell'Europa e anche lui giocando
we're at a
come
time
EU,
where
come voi,
Europe is
con
experiencing a
Eumans,
period of
il
renewal, and we
tema
wanted to be here
fondamentale
with
della
you
sua
as
presidenza.
Eumans,
Luca.
and Luca is going to tell you about the topics important to him during his presidency. Thank you very much. Yes, I just wanted to say a couple of words. I'm not going to give a speech as such, but I'm very pleased to be here for this initiative. It's fantastic to be able to welcome some friends who have also been involved in the work of our EESC, Ms. Angeri, and so on. There were certain changes among the staff, and we weren't able to work so closely together, but I'm delighted that we have this initiative here in our house today. I've had a look over your agenda, and I want to particularly highlight two of the points that you're going to be discussing today. All of the points match up with some of the work that the EESC is doing at the moment, but there are two in particular that seem particularly relevant to me. Firstly, the reform of the European Union via means of participatory democracy. And this is really what the committee is here for. Europe has been through an extraordinary development since its beginnings with the European Parliament, and I think you were there recently. Then later the Assembly and the Economic and Social Committee were established to represent intermediary bodies, so civil society, employers, trade unions, employees groups, consumers, foundations, associations. There are all kinds of associations represented. But since the Treaty of Lisbon, there is an unprecedented issue which was brought in by the Court of Justice. The Treaty of Lisbon defined the democratic structure of the European Union. It set out the fact that the European Parliament is at the heart of the European democracy so that citizens can be directly involved in decisions. And Article 11 has to do with participatory democracy. The ECIs were also established by this article, but there are other areas where structured dialogue can take place between citizens, civil society and the EU as well. There are opportunities to have a dialogue. And there's also Article 12, which discusses the roles of the national parliaments. Now, they might have had a couple of glasses of wine when they wrote this, but they certainly weren't drunk, and it was absolutely right that they reinforced the roles of the national parliaments and the European Parliament. Last year, I made some efforts via the initiatives of the EESC to discuss a potential reform of the European Citizens Initiative, but there's still a lot of work to do on that front. We're not quite there yet. With the new van der Leyen Commission, they'll be meeting this evening at dinner, and there will be a conference on the future of Europe, particularly thinking about how to boost participatory democracy, and I hope that we'll hear more about that in the weeks and months to come. I hope that we can really establish a participatory process, especially in the three constituencies that have been the least involved thus far in forming policy. I'm talking about national parliaments, intermediary bodies, so civil society, and local authorities, local stakeholders, and regional stakeholders. Going in that same category as well. We're now starting to talk to the Parliament. The Commission submitted a resolution to the Parliament in January, and this was ratified by the Council, and we hope that this will go further. And it's a very significant time at the moment, because over the next 2 years we should be launching various things which will result in an agreement on how to implement the European Treaty better. We are having a bilateral discussion at the moment with President van der Leyen and the Vice Presidents, Dubravka and so on, the Croatian Commissioner, and others, to ensure that we have a mid-term review to see how we're doing in terms of the priority policies of the new Commission. It's not up to the national governments to do that, it's up to the European government. So we have a big adventure ahead of us, and I'm very pleased to be part of it. There's another point which I thought was very important, and that's the issue of fundamental rights and the rule of law. This has come onto the European agenda, especially since we started seeing certain events happening in Austria, this election for 6 months, and also cases in Poland and Hungary. Sentences were issued by the Court of Justice at European level, but that's not really the problem. It's that there's nothing to apply Article 6. For several years now, the EESC has said that we need to strengthen two things to be able to reinforce this article. We need broad participation from the civil society in our countries. And we also need a preventive arm, an early warning system, if something is not working well, not to just detect problems, but to launch a dialogue before a disaster occurs. And there was an opinion of the EESC a few years ago that said that the European Union needs to adopt a tool that's stable and applies to everyone. At the moment, it seems as if the West is imposing things on the east of Europe, but that's not how we want to do it. It should be equal for everyone. So I think these two particular points are very important for the whole of the European Union. They affect all member states, and we're talking about strengthening dialogue as well, structured dialogue that we can have together. And this is dependent on legal measures included in Article 7 and also on the work of the European Court of Justice. So when I saw the news that Europe was going to have an ECI on this topic, I welcomed it. I was very pleased about that because everything that pushes in this direction is good. It will help us to consolidate the decision we're going to take in the future. We need a strong policy, and that's what the new Commission, Van der Leyen Commission, is hoping for, as it discusses with the European Parliament as well. We are waiting for the proposals that the Vice President is going to put on the table next. But in any case, we welcome any kind of initiative like this that pushes us in that direction, because we need to be independent, autonomous. We can't simply be pushed around by the direction that policy is going in. Of course, we have our national parliaments and so on that play a role. But in any case, we really need to ensure that the rule of law is applied in a homogeneous way in all member states. It's not enough to, well, we can't allow people to think that the rule of law is not applied everywhere in the European Union. Thank you, President. Thank you for your political speech. You didn't just stick to introductory remarks. You went beyond that, so thank you. You touched upon some of the points which we have already discussed and which we're going to be talking about more today, so thank you. It was important for us to hear those words. I will continue my introduction now, and then we're going to hear from Virginia Fiume. Virginia coordinates the Eumans work, and she's also organised this particular conference. I'll continue speaking in Italian, so to speak, for this introductory speech, and I want to explain to you how we're going to continue our work after this as well. I think it's important, by way of introduction, to say that there are some people here among you who have been very closely involved in preparing this conference over the past few months, preparing this meeting, but also we have people here who are experts on specific topics and don't know how we've arrived at this point. So I want to give you some information about that, although some of you might have heard this already, so I apologize for that. Now, a group of people came together, mainly Italians, to discuss what we saw as a rupture, a divide, an ever-deepening divide between institutional policy on the one hand, so I'm talking about democratic policy, representative democracy, which was mainly based on national policies with certain exceptions. So this is on the one hand, and on the other hand, if I can put it this way, the role of movements, people on the streets, protests. In the past few weeks, there hasn't been a city on the planet where there hasn't been some kind of protest or other. In dictatorships, but also in democratic countries, there have been a lot of protests, and often these have been against the powerlessness of the national governments and their inability to deal with topics that are vital to people's lives. I think that what's missing is a link, a stable link between the mainly national-focused institutional policy and these street protests and civic movements. So I think that there are many areas today that would merit from political action, that need to set specific objectives to protect living conditions and the environment and society. But they don't necessarily need to be electoral-based initiatives. There are people that are dealing with certain issues who then stand for elections to represent the people to the institutions.
ciò che diventa sempre più
And I think
necessario
that
è il
it's becoming increasingly
rafforzamento
necessary
degli strumenti istituzionali
strengthen
di partecipazione popolare.
participatory democracy mechanisms, so to involve citizens, engage public opinion.
Un coinvolgimento di manifestazione
I'm not just talking
attorno a un
about
obiettivo, ma che
people
siano
getting
anche
together to
movimenti di
protest or
proposta
make a stand about a certain
su
topic,
temi
but really coming up with
specifici.
proposals about specific issues.
Questo va fatto innanzitutto al di là dei
This
confini
needs to be
nazionali,
done
cioè oltre i confini nazionali.
thinking beyond national
Perché
borders. We need to
quello che manca
have a
veramente
transnational approach,
sono
because
dei movimenti in grado
we're
di
really
collegare
lacking
obiettivi ed iniziative in giro per il mondo
a movement which can bring together the
anche
different events
oltre
happening
la
all
politica
around the
nazionale.
world,
E quindi
whether they're
arriviamo alla
national
dimensione europea.
events, national issues or not.
Oggi c'è una nuova
We
Commissione
have this
europea,
European
un
level at which we can
programma
operate. We've got the new
di
European
temi che
Commission,
sono stati
and their
presentati
programme
dalla Presidente
has
von der
been
Leyen
presented
al
by
Parlamento
President von der
europeo,
Leyen to the European
su
Parliament,
questioni delle quali anche noi cerchiamo di
and it
occuparci,
includes topics
dalla
that we are
questione dello
working
Stato
on as
di
well,
diritto,
the
alla
issues
questione del
such as the rule of
riscaldamento
law,
globale, dalle
global
questioni
warming,
della innovazione tecnologica,
technological innovation,
dell'intelligenza artificiale,
artificial intelligence,
alle questioni della partecipazione stessa
and
dei
also
cittadini
the topic of citizens'
nelle
participation
vicende europee. Noi
itself,
sappiamo
citizens'
però
participation
che molto
in
spesso
European decisions.
dalle buone e
But
ottime
as we
intenzioni
know,
di
very
partenza,
often, even though there might be
quando
good
poi
intentions
si passa
from the outset,
al necessario consenso dei governi
when it comes to
nazionali,
getting the agreement of the national governments
degli obiettivi molto ambiziosi rischiano di
with regard to these very lofty
uscire
ambitions,
molto ridimensionati dai
often
veti
things get watered
incrociati
down
della politica nazionale.
because the
Allora, che cosa
national
manca,
policy interests come into
effettivamente?
play.
Manca
So what are we
una
missing? What do
forte
we need?
spinta di mobilitazione e di iniziativa
We're missing
popolare, magari
a
proprio su
major
quegli stessi temi.
citizenship movement, perhaps on these very topics: global warming, the rule of law,
innovazione tecnoscientifica,
technological
diritti sociali,
and scientific
diritti di
innovation, social
partecipazione.
rights, the right to participate.
La politica nazionale,
National
delle istituzioni
policy
nazionali e anche la politica dell'Unione
created by
Europea e
national
delle
institutions
istituzioni
and the
europee,
European policy as well,
da sola, a mio avviso, rischia di non farcela.
promoted by the
Nemmeno
European
la grande
institutions,
paura che c'è
is
o c'è
often
stata in occasione
doomed to
delle elezioni
fail.
europee.
It doesn't matter what the good
Della
intentions
montata dei
were
nazionalismi, dei
during the
populismi,
European elections. There has
degli
been a rise in
estremismi
populism,
politici.
nationalism, political
La paura non è
extremism,
sufficiente
but fear
per creare
is
il
not enough
consenso necessario ad
to
un'agenda
create
di riforma
the
europea.
agreement that's
È
needed at
indispensabile
European level
aggregare il
to change
massimo
policy.
di
We need to
partecipazione e
gather
consenso
together
da parte
as many people as
dell'opinione
possible to
pubblica. E allora, qual è
participate
il
in forming
progetto
public
che
opinion?
iniziamo oggi a discutere?
So what's the
Oggi
project
e
that
domani
we
a
are going to be
discutere,
discussing
ma che avrà
today and
bisogno
tomorrow?
di molti mesi e di altri appuntamenti
And it's not
per
just
essere
today and
elaborato.
tomorrow. We're going to be working on this
Il
for
progetto è
several
quello di
months.
una
Our
piattaforma di
project
un
is
pacchetto
the
di
setting up of a
riforme
platform
europee
to discuss a package of
che
European
non sia
reforms.
semplicemente una richiesta a chi
And we
governa,
won't simply be
una
presenting
richiesta
a
alla
request
Commissione europea,
to
una
those in
richiesta al
government, a
Parlamento,
request to
ma
the
che sia
European Commission or the Parliament.
proposta di
But
iniziativa
we will be
popolare.
submitting
E
proposals
quindi
generated
abbiamo
by the
iniziato
general
nelle
public.
scorse settimane,
Over the past few
ne
weeks,
parlerà più diffusamente Virginia
and
Fiume,
Virginia
a
will speak more about this.
sostenere iniziative o a copromuovere, a
We have
sostenere
started
iniziative
supporting
dei
and
cittadini
promoting
europei sul
European
carbon pricing,
citizens' movements to do
su
with
una
carbon
misura
pricing,
della quale parleremo oggi, sulla quale
which we'll talk
oltre
about
20 premi
today,
Nobel, scienziati di tutto il mondo insistono sulla necessità
because
di
there
dare
are
un
Nobel
prezzo
Prize winners
alle
and others
emissioni di
around the
CO2
world that
per
say that we
seriamente
need
pensare
to
di poterle ridurre.
truly
Oppure la
place a
questione
genuine tax
della
on
quale il
carbon
Presidente
to
ha
reduce
parlato
CO2
prima,
emissions.
dello Stato di
And our
diritto,
President mentioned
cioè
before
di meccanismi
the rule
non
of law.
eccezionali una tantum, ma di
We need
monitoraggio permanente
tools
e di
which
sanzione
don't just come in on a one-off
laddove
basis, but are
Paesi
really
membri,
put in place
qualsiasi
to
Paese
ensure
membro,
that all
non Paesi
member
membri dell'Est
states,
Europa, si
not
trovino a
just the Eastern
violare
European
i
countries,
principi fondamentali
have
della democrazia e dello
a
Stato di
means to
diritto.
ensure
In
that
questo
there is
percorso
something to
abbiamo
help them if
incontrato
there are
altre
violations of the rule of law.
organizzazioni che hanno
We've been
proposto
meeting together with other
iniziative dei cittadini
organizations that
europei,
have
alcuni
put forward European citizens' initiatives. Some of you are here today to represent those organisations, so we'll be looking forward to hearing from you today and tomorrow. Our idea is to come up with a package of reform proposals put forward by the European citizens on the environment, on human rights, on self-determination and participation, on scientific research, such as genome editing, for example, for animals, but also for plants, reproductive health, social rights in Europe, and many other topics that we're going to be discussing in detail. And we want to come up with a package of reforms generated by the public, which gathers together proposals from the academic world, the scientific world, NGOs, and also political organisations and institutions, so that we can collect all the signatures we need. Of course, we know very well that tools for participatory democracy in Europe at institutional level are very fragile nowadays. They are introspective, and we need to reform them. We need to make them more effective. We need to make it an obligation to have a debate in the European Parliament when these instruments are used, but we also need to assess their effectiveness at communicating and informing people. I don't know if surveys have ever been carried out among European citizens, but if you ask 1,000 European citizens if they know about the European Citizens' Initiative, the ECI, I'm pretty sure hardly anyone will be able to tell you what it is or say that they've heard of the ECI. We want to promote equal dignity for all. We're not trying to work against the European parliaments, the national parliaments, or against elected democracy, but we want to strengthen the other arm of democracy, participatory democracy, which is supported by local associations, street protest organisers. There are other organisations where people come together. They produce participatory reports and so on. There are other areas where citizens are coming together and making decisions. This is the second arm of democracy, and it needs to be considered on an equal footing. We need to allocate the same resources to this arm of democracy so that citizens know that they can go to vote at the elections for one party or another, but that there are also resources being spent to help citizens sign up to ECIs, to take part in education campaigns. The communication campaigns that the ECIs carry out should be shared as widely as possible among citizens. They shouldn't just be something that the elite know about and those who are involved in the European institutions in some way. We've already launched a first initiative on this topic by sending a letter to the European Commission talking about the fact that participatory and representative democracy should be on a level playing field. And I hope that over the next couple of days we'll be discussing some of the other initiatives out there as well. We could consider sending a petition and a request to amend the European report on ECIs. So we'll be discussing all of this, and we'll also be discussing the Eumans initiative, which aims to be an initiative that serves other organisations and movements who already have their own priorities. We want to be the bridge between these organisations and bring their ideas together so that we can put forward a comprehensive package of reforms for the European Union, including reforms for European democracy. This is the target, the goal that we've set ourselves. So today and tomorrow, we're not just having a meeting, we're not just having a conference to discuss carbon pricing, genome editing, science and technology, or participation. We are trying to discuss these topics, certainly, but our aim
una rete, di un movimento di
is to
movimenti
further our
capaci di
network and
trasformare
further
questi temi
this
in
network of
iniziativa
movements
politica attraverso
and
la
come up
partecipazione
with a package
cittadini.
of
E
European
quindi,
reforms
diciamo,
generated
complemento,
by the
parte
citizens.
integrante della mia relazione introduttiva sarà ora quella di Virginia Fiume
That was about all I
nel
wanted to say in
spiegare
terms
a
of
che
an
punto
introductory
siamo in
speech,
questo
and I'll now give the
percorso,
floor to
affinché poi
Virginia
ciascuno
so she
possa
can tell us
intervenire non
how far we've
solo
got
su quello su cui ha una competenza diretta, ma eventualmente anche esprimere un
and
parere sul
how we'll be able
percorso che
to
vogliamo compiere. E quindi do la
continue our
parola
work
a
in the
Virginia
future.
Fiume.
So I'd like to give the floor now to Virginia Fiume.
Thank you, Marco, and thanks everyone for joining. It's really a pleasure to have all of you here, both the discussants and the attendees of the event, who we hope will interact in a way that is very circular and not top-down. To the heart of politics, this was the call that Marco gave us a few months ago, trying to find a way to go from the issues that we feel as humans and citizens, and find the way to have a political impact through democratic participations. There is a difference between being a concerned citizen and being an active citizen. And I believe that the difference is that the political democratic action is not only based on showing up at the polls. There are multiple tools that are available for citizens to actually try and have an impact. But this needs to happen in collaboration with elected representatives in democracy. I'm happy that today, for example, we have with us Eleonora Evi as a member of the European Parliament, because she represents today exactly the connection point between what citizens can ask, the tools that citizens need to use to achieve the results, and the fact that ultimately the major part of the decision happens in the democratic institutions. The approach, I will talk to you about the initiatives that we kicked off, the initiatives that we joined and supported, and the initiative that I hope we will build together, starting from these 2 days. All of them have 3 elements in common. And I think this explains also the program of these 2 days. Scientific methodology and a scientific and fact-based approach to the issues that needs to be tackled. The second element is use and continuously improve the participatory democracy tools available and the integration with elected representatives. But then there is a 4th pillar, which is something that with Eumans we are trying to build up, and I'm going to show you something that is a representation of this in a minute, which is the cooperation, the ability to cooperate between different individuals and organizations. Very often you have organizations that have their goal, they can be parties, they can be NGOs, whatever, and they keep trying to achieve the result standing by themselves. Effectively, either we join forces and we pursue certain goals together and cooperate, or you don't get the result. So the development of technological solutions, thinking together about how we connect this organization, how we work together, which tools we use, which rules we give to our organization and cooperation, this is an essential element to make sure that the results are achieved and not only achievable. So what we did was to launch and collaborate in 2 European citizens initiatives. First of all, we might all know it, but who knows what is an European citizen initiative? Okay, considering that. So a European citizen initiative, and I say it also for the people that are following the live stream on the social networks, a European citizen initiative is a tool provided by the European treaties, which allows 1 million of citizens to subscribe to a policy proposal that go to the European Commission within the realm of the competencies of the European Commission. It sounds difficult, and it is. It's very difficult to collect 1 million signatures of European citizens living in EU member states, which gets the difference between a simple appeal, a call for asking for something, and a participatory democracy tool. We set up, together with other organizations, 2 European citizen initiatives, one on the rule of law, you can find it later on the website formyrights.eu, and one for carbon pricing, stopglobalwarming.eu. Using this tool helped us and is helping us to connect with European citizens across Europe and to identify a common ground for actions. So in the panel today, in the next one, particularly on carbon pricing, we will see how this effectively works. Setting up a European citizen initiative is difficult. It requires budget, it requires knowledge, it requires energies, it requires active participation of citizens. It's not just about asking for a signature, it requires being on the streets, being in institutions, being connecting with other organizations, finding multipliers who can propagate the voice. And this happens in an informative void. Basically, it doesn't break the news that some citizens across Europe are collecting signatures for something. It's less fascinating and impactful than a huge demonstration one day in one square. The demonstration is important, but this daily work that it requires to use the democratic tools, it doesn't break the news. And we do believe it should, if not breaking the news, at least being there, being told to the people. So, what's going to happen in these 2 days? I don't want to take too much time to the great speakers and to you guys that are sitting here. So we are going to have a focus this afternoon on 3 main issues: carbon pricing, aviation tax, and in general, the environmental challenges. Then we're going to have a second panel on genome editing. And then we're going to have a third panel on digital rights, moving between interoperability of digital platforms and civic artificial intelligence. And then tomorrow we're going to discuss with a more focus on fundamental rights and social rights. To do that, I'm going to ask Carlo to share the screen. We developed a sort of a toolkit. Maybe you're going to see it up here. Because the work needs to be collaborative. So you will find a shared file that contains all the topics that we're going to tackle today. Let's open the Eumans2020 Excel file. I'm going to send the link via email later on. And it's not going to work. So you're going to see an amazing Excel file with the different topics that we're going to tackle, some key references to each topic, and then for each one of them there is a collaborative notepad where each one of us can add his notes and thoughts, his ideas, his thinking. You can do it now as we speak, you can do it later on tonight, you can do it whenever you want, but the whole idea is that putting together the knowledge is the first step to develop ideas and finding ways to collaborate and going beyond borders. So now the doc contains the topics we will tackle today, and then tomorrow morning you will find the others. Let's go through the conclusion. I'll give the floor to, I don't know if Marco Perduca wants to say something now. So Marco is going to introduce us formally to the scientific and technological topics of the afternoon, and then we'll move to the carbon pricing topic. Consider that each format has its own discussants, and then there is space for everyone to talk. So just let me know if you want to say something, and I will add it. The program is quite tight, so I'll go to Marco. We are just late 5 minutes on the roadmap, so we can do it. Thanks, Marco.
Thank you, Virginia. Just a few words on what Science for Democracies is. It's not only we have a beautiful sign by the door, but we also have some goodies that are for free, at least today, to kickstart our merchandising campaign. It's something that has the most important part on the B side. So on the back of the T-shirt, you will have the description of what is the right to science. And this is the topic that I will address today to try and prepare you for the rest of the discussion. Science, as not many people know, is a human right and has been a human right since the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights a little over 70 years ago. It's in that declaration is in Article 27. Over the years, it has been articulated and codified in a more stringent way, in particular in something that is close to where we are today, in the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Science is a cultural right. Article 15 of that covenant speaks about three important things related to science. The first part, which could also be called the right of science, is the freedom necessary to carry out research, regardless of the topic that is being studied. The most ethically sensible thing should be studied to prove that it's, in fact, dangerous or it can pose a threat, or we have to try and regulate, if not prohibit outright. But we have to know exactly what we are talking about, and without freedom of research, such a thing cannot happen. The second element is the sharing of scientific knowledge and the promotion of scientific culture, which is also in line with all the activities that we do, not only to improve exchanges among scientists, but also to improve education system that also include culture in all its various forms, and science is one of them. And the last, it's part of this right to science, is possibly the most important one, and one that ties everything that we are doing, also things concerning the rule of law together, which is the right to enjoy the benefits of the latest discoveries of science. This is yet another universal right. Now, because these rights are included in a covenant that addresses economic rights, we have to take into consideration the fact that we cannot pretend, so to speak, that the right to have freedom of research should be applied equally in the United States of America or in any EU member states and in Sierra Leone or Cambodia, because economics are completely different and priorities are completely different. Nevertheless, what is being discovered or elaborated in the rich part of the world or in parts of the world where you have easier access to resources should also be enjoyed universally. And if you look at whatever we deal with through this framework, this is a great help in terms of methodology for decision makers, because you have to share what you're working on with your peers, hoping that what you're doing can be duplicated, falsified, and then reorganized according to the criticism that is being provided and offered by the other groups. And also, as matter-of-factly, once you have a legislation that is no longer capable of governing something, you have to update the law according to the latest discoveries of people that have been working in a more stable and concentrated way on that topic. This doesn't necessarily mean that new is better than old. This is not what we're talking about. At the same time, and we will hear later on about genome editing, if we have something that has been invented in 2012, it is not necessarily automatic that a law or a directive adopted in 2001, sic et simpliciter, can be used to rule the new invention. Again, not because old is bad and new is always good, but you have to adapt and understand, thanks to the evidences provided by the scientific community, which is global by definition, what is missing in order to better regulate something new. There are, of course, a lot of political strings to these kind of decisions. We know that Marco and I have also been members, or he has been member of the European Parliament for 10 years. I've been a senator in Italy for 5. So we know that when it comes to adopting legislation, the final word is up to legislators. We are not trying to substitute science to politics. And science is certainly not a new religion. Actually, it's the contrary or the opposite. You don't have to have faith in something, but because you're dealing with reality and facts, you have to confront those facts on a daily basis. And again, as we were saying, sharing and listening to the peers, it's a very important part of this. But let's make an example without citing a country. If there is a possibility of using social media to express your minds, and there is a national law that doesn't allow you to do that, that is in a double way, a violation of a human rights. You are hindering freedom of speech, but you're also not allowing a group of people to benefit from the latest discoveries of science, because the internet could be one of them, or certain applications within the internet are also another one of them. And this, and with this I will conclude, it's also a new tool to promote a dialogue, and dialogue, I think, has been the key word that the President here has used, to try and have a confrontation or an exchange of ideas or views with countries that are in a way violating those rights and those obligations. It could be a diplomatic tool. It could be something that, and with this I will conclude because it's part of what the discussion is all about today, it's yet another ammunition for citizens when they're trying to better their situation in democratic societies and also in non-democratic societies. Democratic societies are lucky to have instruments that can be triggered to participate. Not so democratic societies don't. And so we are now, these 2 days are dedicated to the European continent, but we also have to take into consideration that elsewhere, from Africa to Asia to Latin America, there are other situations in which also this right to science can be helpful. So after 2 days, please take a T-shirt. Tomorrow there will be additional goodies, and we have, and look at the back. For once, the B side is more important than the A side. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Marco Perduca, who is the coordinator of Science for Democracy. I, of course, forgot to mention the organizations that called for this meeting. So Eumans, Science for Democracy, Associazione Luca Coscioni, the ECIT Foundation and the Good Lobby, who will be with us tomorrow, and the Centre d'Action Laique, something like that.